Burial mounds. Burial in general. Alright, years and years ago, maybe about 22 years ago, I was in this forest and I was playing with somebody. I don't know who it was at the time. I just thought it was like a Vietnam vet or something that was hiding in the woods, and for some reason he was doing things with me. But later on I found out these are the woods people. So anyway, there I am. I'm looking at this one area of the forest that I don't want to go in, and it's down by a swamp. And I just have this horrible feeling about that place. And I've kind of been down close to it, but never really went down all the way to the edge of the field and then into the forest. So one day I was feeling stupid, and I said, I'm going to go down there and check it out. So down I went, and I got to the edge of the forest, and I started walking into the forest, and this is this like gorge type area, and it just kind of funneled into the swamp. So I'm down there, and I'm getting jabbed in the legs. It feels like sticks and stuff, like I'm walking through down branches and all that in the undergrowth, the ferns and everything. So they start jabbing me in the legs as I'm walking, and I'm like, oh, this is terrible, you know. So I look down and I try to walk a little further, and I'm going crunch, crunch, and I realize, wait, this just doesn't sound like sticks breaking. It just has this other weird sound. So I look down, and I don't really see anything different other than I see sticks poking up out of the ferns. And it finally comes to me that what I'm looking at and what I'm doing is I'm standing inside a rib cage, which is facing upwards. The bones are facing upwards. And then I looked around, and because I was getting a little fearful, like, oh my gosh, I've come across like a kill zone for like a mountain lion or something like that, or something like that. I had no idea. And so as I was looking around me in like a 50 to 100 foot area, and it could have been gone on more, I don't know, but I could see bones sticking up out of the ferns, and these were rib cages. And then I started looking around myself. I didn't move because that was kind of like a little, it just got to me for that second, and I looked around and I realized that there were all these rib cages facing upwards, and they were just buried in the forest, and they were just laying out all there, and they were all facing upwards and next to each other. And I had no idea what was going on, and at that time I had some fear going through my head. I was thinking, you know, this is a mountain lion's kill zone, and you know, he's gonna be right around here. So I kind of like backed out of the forest and didn't turn my back really. I just kind of walked out and up the hill and out of there, and that was kind of scary. But unfortunately, I went back there, maybe 5 years later, and people had cut down the whole forest, bulldozed the whole freaking forest there, a big chunk. And they'd taken bulldozers and flattened the land there, and they had flattened it out so far that it covered the boneyard. I couldn't believe that, my luck. I mean, here it is. I found a burial, somebody was burying animals. And it's not farmers or anything like that. It was out in the middle of nowhere. There's no paths to it. There's nothing. Just this burial place. So anyway, so now we zoom to this era. And I was out in the forest a couple weeks ago, and I heard a noise in the brush. So I went to check it out, and there was nobody standing there. There should have been. I heard the 2 or 3 steps, and nobody was there. But I found myself in this nice forest, open forest. The ground on the ground was pine needles and all that kind of stuff, and it was really soft and spongy, but there wasn't anything growing in there, like ferns and everything. It was like kind of clear, and I just kind of thought, oh yeah, okay. So then I'm walking around and I'm thinking, oh, you know, somebody's obviously up here and watching the place for some reason, I don't know. And I found an Indian chair up there, and this is one of my videos, my last videos that I took. Anyway, in that forest, when all of a sudden I smelled that smell of death again, and I'm like, oh no, this is terrible. And I kind of did a quick look around, but I couldn't find any body or anything. And it occurred to me just then, that after finding this body, you know, that was buried in the ground in a shallow grave in pine woods, I said to myself, what if, and this is a big what if, but I'll tell you why I think this, but anyway, what if this place here is a burial ground? And these little mounds I see, kind of thing, small mounds, just it looks like somebody buried something. And there's all these like mounds in the forest, on the forest floor. I was wondering, what if I dug into one of those and that's an actual burial of some animal that died? And somebody's actually burying these animals. That's what I'm thinking anyway. And I'm taking this from Native American accounts that these guys take care of the forests and all that and the earth. Well, and I keep saying this to everybody, people don't seem to get it. They, you know, like, yes, if one animal dropped dead, right, there might be a lot of carnivores coming out of the woodwork and they'll eat it and stuff like that, but there's going to be a mess and it's going to smell like the Dickens and all this kind of stuff. Well, now there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of deer in the forests up here, around here. There are tons and tons of other animals, just tons of them. Well, I assume there's animals dropping dead all over the forests. Well, if there was even 3 dead animals in some forest, it would stink. There would be so much bacteria and it would just be horrible. So it's obvious to me that somebody's cleaning the forest. And who's doing it? It's the woods people. Of course they're doing that. That's their job. They go around and clean up the bodies. I'm sure the animals chomp away on them as much as they can, but then they get to a point where it just stinks, so they have to bury them. Now, I'm not sure how they do that exactly, but it's obviously, to me, ritual. Now, finding the burial of the bones like that was interesting because it was in a swamp and they were all facing upwards and they would just bleach in the sun. It obviously been done for a long time. And so anyway, so I'm thinking that in different forests, there are different ways of burying animals. I mean, people. Well, not people, but animals. Burying animals. And in these pine forests, it's acidic, you know, and maybe that helps the dissolving of the bones and all that kind of stuff, and masks the smell. Then it was occurring to me, like, why are all this, what is the deal with all this pine needle stuff? And as everybody knows, pine needles smell really nice, you know, when they're freshly picked. So I was thinking, what if these guys use that because they do work with dead animals and all that, and it must smell like the Dickens, that they might use that to mask the odor that's on them, you know, after they get rid of a body, that you know, they might smell a bit, and so they use pine to get rid of that smell and be able to live with themselves. Let's see. So my job is now to find these burial places, and the horrible thing is is that I've seen these places elsewhere, and I've thought, this is really strange. It's just like all cleared out in the forest, like somebody's doing something in here, but what is it, you know? And I think I've got it. And well, like I said, all I have to do is dig in one of these mounds, these little burial things, and if I find bones and all that kind of stuff, then that's going to answer my question. Then it answers my question of, like, what the person is doing up there in the forest. He is minding the forest. He's the king of the forest, and that's his job, is to clean the forest up and make it presentable and livable. So, but that goes back to, where does he go, you know? And then I'm back to the doorway thing. They run 3 steps and disappear. And again, I don't like to think dimensions, because that just sucks, you know. I mean, it could very well be something like that, but then that's gonna change everything. But I still think that they just go into the ground. You know, I don't know how they do it, but I just think they just go into the ground. It makes a lot of sense and all that. And the Native Americans said that too, that that's what they do. But you never know. I mean, these things aren't spirits, because they obviously can work on our plane, in our dimension, and they're governed by our rules. How much they're governed by our rules, I don't know, but I have a feeling that they just know the rules better than I do, and they're aware of nature's gifts more than I am. And maybe, you know, like I said, you know, maybe they found caves years ago, and, you know, thousands of years ago, and they've just built onto them and built into them, and they've created doorways so they can hide from people, and over the thousands of years and everything, and they just live underground. But the burials are interesting, you know, because everybody says, well, they've never found a bear carcass. Well, a bear carcass would smell like the dickens if it was out there, and any big deer or anything like that. But I think they take the meat and maybe the fur and use it, and then they take the bones and all that, and they just bury all that junk, and all the other stuff has to do with that. And so they're the ones who are doing that. The bears aren't going off and finding some cave out in the middle of the forest, and these caves that nobody's ever found ever in their whole life, you know. I mean, there's millions of bears that have born and died, you know, in the forest, and if nobody's finding them, then it's pretty obvious that somebody's doing something with them. So that's my theory. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out there and fulfill that theory. I wish I had a gas mask though, but this is up by the Hole area and the ancient site that I was up at, which kind of makes sense, you know. There's the ancient site, there's the burials. They're at the top of the hill on a steepish hill, and in a pine forest where nobody would go or for any reason at all. And they probably, that's the burial ground. At least that's one of them. But now I'm getting it. What I should do is, well, that would be interesting, like take a GPS unit, stuff it in a carcass, like in where the bone marrow would be, and then see if that carcass, where that carcass goes. Wouldn't that be freaky if, you know, I found my GPS unit in a up on the mountain, you know, and I dug it up and there it was. That would be really weird. Then I would have total proof that there's somebody out there burying the bodies. That's an interesting idea. So anyway, that's that theory. It's called burial. All right. See you later.